Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet the island girl, she might Jxxiii wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I want to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Karen Rands. Karen is a leader of the Compassionate Capitalist movement, host of the Compassionate Capitalist Show, creator of the Compassionate Capitalist Wealth Maximizer System. That's going to be a tongue twister the more times I say that. And the author of the best-selling primer for how to create wealth investing in entrepreneurs, Inside Secret to Angel Investing. Her passion and purpose is to inspire a whole new generation of diverse investors to embrace the idea of creating wealth, investing in entrepreneurs as an asset class. She tells her growing community of compassionate capitalists, if building a successful business is the greatest way to create wealth, the second greatest way is to be an investor in those successful businesses. Get the financial reward without all the risk and hard work and sleepless nights. Her quote, it is after all how most wealthy choose to grow their wealth, and people like you and me were not invited to have a seat at the table until now. So Karen, with that being said, welcome to A Seat at My Table, the Deepak Saini Show. Glad to have you today.
Very excited to be a part of your show and your community. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Deepak.
You are welcome. So we're going to get into it, what compassionate capitalism means. But first, I always like to start off with, I have some, much like yourself, some very unique people and some very unique things that they're involved with. So how did you fall into this? What's the bit of the backstory here?
Yeah. It's interesting because, and that is actually part of the story of doing this whole creation of this compassionate capitalist movement and what I'm trying to accomplish here. Because when I was at IBM in my corporate gig, right, my last job there was, my nickname was the deal maker because the title was Complex Opportunity Business Manager. And what that meant was that IBM had sort of realized that in their changing in the way that they organized in some of that reorganization stuff that they went on in the 90s, they had a lot of inexperienced reps. So when they had the person like myself, really only been there, 11, 12 years, but I was considered a senior rep at that point in time. So we were the ones that would be able to solve the complex problems that our customers were having by finding the resources in IBM that would help them. And so my job in the group that I worked in ended up being where we were working with these startup .com, click and mortars, all these people that were the new generation of innovation that was coming out, which what ultimately kind of led to the .com bomb, right? But it was like IBM realized they were missing out on them starting on their equipment because the way everything was structured. So my job was to get IBM resources and kind of the golden seal of approval so they could go out and get VC money and then come back and spend it with IBM. So I thought I knew all about the capital markets, right? I thought I was like, and I wanted to be in that parade and not watch that parade go by, meaning the .com parade, because it was just so exciting. It was like at that time, eBay and Amazon and all these people were going public and all this new stuff was happening. And then so the joke is that I didn't realize, because in my own little bubble of IBM, I had no idea that there was a .com bubble happening. And that parade that I got into was the parade of like an Animal House. Have you seen that movie where they turn down the dead end alley and they're all banging into the wall? Well, that was the parade I chose to get in on when I left IBM, because I was going to go pursue this wonderful opportunity a client of mine had that had developed this incredible software, and I was going to take him to market, raise him capital, become a rich tech entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff. And two lessons learned. First of all, I was introduced to the world of angel investing that I had no idea about. I only knew about banks and VCs, no idea there was this thing in the middle. And I part of my story now is that I was invited to this meeting. I was checking it out to see if it was good for him to present. And then I was also starting to bird dog a little bit for this pseudo VC. And I walked into this room of a secret society because, never heard of it. I'd never even heard of the term angel investing until I was invited to that meeting. And then I saw all these people, mostly these men that were picking and choosing the deals that had potential to become the thing that you would hear about, because they would be that money before a company was bankable or VCable. Who gave them the money to get started? It was angel investors. And it was so logical to me, but I just had never had known that. And these are people writing their own checks. Like, wow, that's a big deal. And so I discovered that, and that set me on the course. I ultimately took over that organization and started running it. The guy that founded it was looking for somebody to mentor to grow into running the organization. That became me. And I also discovered the other big rule of angel investing and capital and entrepreneurs going to market. Check the ego at the door. That whole thing where a product with a B team will not, it's better to have an A team with a B product. An A team with a B product will win. And when somebody's getting ready to write a check and they know more about building successful companies than you, then you can't have your ego and say that my way or the highway. You have to, it's better to be a rich founder than a poor CEO. And so I learned that lesson the hard way with that first company. And, but that set me on the course that I'm on now.
Yeah, Karen, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but I'm like, I love that. It's better to be a rich founder than a poor CEO. That might be the title of our show, I think. Maybe that's a nugget right there. Very interesting story. Very interesting story. And I certainly aware of all of those. I've never had to do it myself personally. Not yet. But certainly aware of that industry, angel investing in VC and that sort of thing. So very, very fascinates me. So I love that you're having that I have you on here. So back to what I said earlier about what is compassionate capitalism, because that's a term that you don't hear very often, if ever, and many people are not going to know. Many people in this audience, I think, and I have a very diverse audience, and there's a lot of financial type of people and people in financial markets and professional services, and I don't think they know what this is either. So please, can you explain that to us?
Sure thing. Yeah, I get the reaction sometimes when I've had it on my card for a long time, and when people see it, they'll go, compassionate capitalist, is that possible? Because they don't think of capitalists as having any kind of compassion, right? So a lot of times. So the basic definition, the original sort of definition of it was for people that invest time, knowledge, resources, and money into entrepreneur endeavors to bring innovation to the market, create jobs, and create wealth for all those involved. And that's a lot of words, right? Just like the compassionate capitalist wealth maximizing system, we're trying to just say just a wealth maximizing system. But the reason why, so when I first started meeting angel investors, and I would be like, how'd you get started? Why are you an angel investor? And in almost all cases, yes, the capitalist side of it was they wanted to make money. But the reason why they chose to learn how to be an angel investor, invest time, knowledge, money into being an angel investor, versus in addition to whatever they did with real estate and stocks, was because they had this compassion of wanting to have an impact, a contribution on the world, wanting to be able to see a solution being brought to market that could change people's lives, make the world we live in a better place, for you and me. I feel like a song right there, but it's like that, it was, and that was really sort of a part of it. And so when we started to hit the Great Recession, and my podcast at the time was called Spec Talk Radio, Southeast Private Equity Conference, because I did this big conference with dozens of companies pitching to hundreds of investors at the time. And money was starting to get on the sidelines, right? There was plenty of money still there, but that people were concerned. And so they weren't investing. And so to me, the idea of investing in entrepreneurs and these companies that are going to create the new jobs was the best way to get out of our economic malaise, if you will, right? And so way to unpack that was to get that money off the sidelines and get it back into putting it into companies. And so I renamed the podcast to the Compassionate Capitalist Show at the time and started trying to promote that as an idea to compel these investors to get back to be a part of the solution that we were looking for. And of course, what ultimately came out of that was the 2012 Jobs Act that really opened it all up for everybody to have a seat at the table and kind of changed the whole game of it. But I've evolved that message since then to be, it's deciding to find the things that you're passionate about. And this kind of goes to a little bit about what you do and within your scope of creating healthy, happy lives. And so when you can tie an emotional win, mental stimulation because you're doing something, and an emotional win because it makes you feel good that you've invested in a product or an entrepreneur that you believe is doing something really powerful, and you share their passion. So it becomes capitalist, making money by finding the companies that you share a passion with. So I blended compassion into that as an easier way and more, marketable thing than my original definition. But that's really what it's about. So in relation to conscious capitalism, which more people know about or have heard of, that's really how a company operates to the outside in the way that they embrace their community, their employees, their everything that they do, and about how they run their company, with a sense of consciousness of working towards the better good. And so in compassionate capitalism, it's where that individual says, I'm going to be proactive in the way I invest my money, so that I'm contributing to the betterment of society by lifting up these innovations that need to come to market.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, then sort of the compassion capitalism kind of comes before conscious capitalism. Would that be fair?
Yeah, they kind of coexist. Because the company has to get started, and most companies that become big companies raise capital. A lot of people don't know that. Almost every company you know about had angel investors involved in it, and so sometimes what happens, I see the connection and the synergy is that when companies that have raised capital from people that think this way, they set a corporate culture that leads to the conscious capitalism way of running their business. Okay. And particularly when those very successful entrepreneurs in those companies turn around and become angel investors, they want to have that conscious capitalism corporate culture be a part of the things that they're investing in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, most people are going to know about the stock market, and they're going to probably even know about IPOs. And there's certainly, IPOs happen all the time, but we certainly get peaks and valleys of issues coming to market. And certainly the last number of years, and you probably get bombarded too, like crypto investment. Some are scams and some are legit. Often there's a lot of legit stuff there for sure, and people are starting to get to know that. And then people, you said VCs, if you're a little bit more in, you're going to know about VCs. But, to your point earlier, about not that many people know about angel investors. So why do angel investors have such a bad PR campaign? Or is that on purpose?
Well, in a way, it was on purpose because, from 1933, when after the Great Depression and the legendary stock market crash, right, the government put in these rules that said you have to have transparency in your financials if you're publicly trading. And so you've got to disclose all this information and all this stuff on a regular basis, and who your investors are and things like that. And so the most wealthy back in the Industrial Revolution that was really building up what was to become the America that we know now, they were all they were investing in each other's businesses and building each other up, whether it was railroads or hotels or banks or financial systems or whatever it is, and so they wanted to continue to do that without having to tell the government about it. So they lobbied the government to put in what became the Securities Exchange Act that had defined how you raise capital as a private companies. And then you had all these exemptions that allowed you to raise capital and not be a public company, and pretty much established the main thing within it, to keep it simple, is that you couldn't general solicit. You had to know the person that you were asking to invest in your company, and you couldn't broadcast it out. You couldn't run an ad. You couldn't do any of that kind of stuff. And that worked fine for many, many years. And then you had the advent of, the IPOs of Microsoft and some of these early tech companies in the 70s that had people investing in them and going, becoming millionaires, multimillionaires when those companies went public, and even employees. I think they said that Microsoft's public offering made 100,000 millionaires, and so it was like, so then now all of a sudden they had money. They saw this formula of making more money than they could in buying stock after it went public, right? Buy wholesale, buy it at $1, goes public at 15. Big difference there, right? Versus buying it at 15 and maybe it goes to 17 and 20 and then drops to 10, and so they saw that as an opportunity. So you have what became Silicon Valley and New York as really your financial hubs, in that generations, it was somebody knowing somebody, inviting somebody to it. And it was what I call that secret society, because it was illegal for entrepreneurs to solicit investments, come look at my deal. And in a way, for those angel groups, they couldn't advertise, hey, become a member. It had to be word of mouth. And so the nature of the people that advise people on money, the financial planners and the wealth managers, they also had an added element of this, that if they were to, like, they had a wealthy client that heard about angel investing and wanted to look at angel investing, that wealth manager could not, for fear of losing their license, advise them on making that angel investment unless it went through the broker dealer that they were working with. So like, for example, Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley, they're huge companies. So they only do really, really large raises because they have to make it available to all of their potential investors. And so if you're raising $1 million, $2 million, you can't make that available to, 100,000 people to think about investing in. And so the very nature of it evolved over time, that those wealth managers said real estate, stocks, because that's what they could advise on, and they couldn't advise on private. So it just became more and more entrenched as this private secret society until the Jobs Act happened. And so you have really right now, since the most accessible is Reg CF, that's the most easy to understand because it's the equity version of reward based, is that, it's only 5 years old. So you have 90, almost 100 years of tradition of what was communicated, what was, advised on, what was, known about, and you don't have that in the angel side. And like I did a podcast yesterday, it'll drop today, that I talk about this and about Bitcoin, right? Well, Bitcoin, when you have people like Matt Damon and Tom Brady doing ads during NFL games saying, come invest in Bitcoin, come and get an account at Coinbase. Or you remember in the Super Bowl where they had the 2 years back when they had the QR code, right? So you have, and all the news, the ups and downs, and you can go and track Bitcoin and the value of it just like you would the stock market. You can look up what has Bitcoin been for the last year, right? And so it has a massive awareness of it, even as risky as it is. That's the irony of it. It is significantly more risky than angel investing is, but people will jump in on that because they think it's a way to get rich quick, but it's like day trading. It takes a lot of time and knowledge to be able to be effective at it. And it's just, there's still the misinformation that has been created for 90 years about angel investing being gambling or being this or that, because that was what the advisors out there, the accountants and lawyers and the wealth managers had to say, because they couldn't say it's good. And so if you can't say it's good, because then why can't I do it? Then you have to say it's bad and these are better. And so I'm unpacking that. Shows like this are an opportunity, the book, everything, my podcast, it's all about putting the correct information out, how to do it wisely, because in reality, even if you Google it, you can go to ChatGPT and look and say, how much more is angel investing more profitable than real estate and stock? And it'll come back and say it's 3 times more profitable. So that is a known fact. So why don't more people do it?
Karen, you bring up a really good point for my next question, but I want to go back just really quick. Just something you said, or I didn't want to interrupt you. So just a little known fact. Well, many people know I work corporately as a corporate accountant, corporate financing. I actually worked one of the last companies I worked at. I was brought in to extra help because they were going to go IPO, oil and gas company. And the only reason I bring it up as a story is that all the money was made by I guess in this case they were VCs, not angel investors. Well, no, that's not true. The early founders and stuff like that, all the money was made before the IPO happened.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
They made
Oh, yeah.
all the money, and we got a little bit of something, so that was okay. So, I just wanted to make that point that like by the time you're
Yeah.
going to retail IPO, and not saying these companies aren't going to, like, obviously if you bought Amazon or Google at the IPO, like, you're laughing now, but the bulk of that money was made before they ever went IPO. So
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of people understand, but a lot of people I think don't.
Oh,
But
even like everybody knows Webvan. Remember Webvan? It was the first grocery delivery app
actually,
out
I don't
there.
remember that.
Oh, okay. Or pets.com.
Okay,
Pets.com. These are
pets.com,
good,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They all went out of business after their IPO. And so I know people that bought Webvan stock right at the IPO, and then it tanked. And it's like, but those angels all made their money at that exit. And they all made
Yeah,
10x
yeah.
their number,
Again,
right?
just sort of behind the door for people who don't know, because I have limited experience myself, but I did see this time. It's like they don't IPO if they're not going to make money. Like,
Right.
the reason is and there's a variety of reasons why people need to cash out, and we're not going to get into that right now. But it's not going to happen if the founders, the angel investors, the VCs, whoever's before retail, they're all going to get money. Otherwise they're not going to do it.
Right.
Type of thing. So you mentioned the last thing you said before I went on this little tangent here was about risk, and how you use the example of Bitcoin or crypto as being actually more risky than angel investing. But a lot of people will say then, but what about, at least with stock market, whatever, even like commodities, and certainly crypto for the most part. Again, there's a lot of scam shit out there as well, but at least there's a market, there's some sense of liquidity. And I think that's what people always hone in, is like, well, if I invest in this private company and et cetera, there's no liquidity, or even maybe they might even put that on real estate. There's no liquidity, or it's much harder, it's a longer liquidity, as whereas the stock market is like, I can get out today. It might not be the price I want, but I can get out today. So how would you kind of put angel investing in that, in that context?
So the way I define angel investing, it goes to the compassionate capitalist definition. So the purest sense is that, yes, you're buying, you're investing in a company and getting their private equity that someday they'll sell, or this kind of stuff. And yes, and it does take at least 5 years, most often 10 years, to get to an exit. So illiquid is very true. Right. That is definitely the case. The one exception that sort of starts to happen nowadays is after you've held your stock 2 years, if sometimes these companies, there's secondary exchanges. And so you can exit out a little bit before the IPO, or you can you legally can sell your stock like under a Reg A plus at the same time that the company is raising money under that. So there's some of that, but that's, not easy. And so the big reason why, so like, to me, angel investing, so many different things that you can do that creates the portfolio. So I call it the angel profitability blueprint, which is what I teach in that wealth maximizing system. And that's where you're going to build a portfolio that has short term, like very much like a real estate. You're building a real estate portfolio. When you're getting started, you might want some that you're going to fix and flip, right? And then you're going to get some that you're going to get, and they have an annuity income coming in because they're rental properties. And then you have some that are strategic because it's in a strategic location. You're going to build something there someday or something like that. And that's a long hold. And so similarly with angel investing. So angel investors, crowdfunding investors, they can be a bridge financer. They're bridging to another round. They're providing the security that is needed in order to get the bank financing for that giant loan that you need to build the product for Walmart, or to fulfill this other kind of a contract or whatever. And they get money in 90 days. When the accounts receivable kicks in, then they, and that payment comes in, then they get paid. And they may revolve their money and get 3-4% every 90-day cycle, which is more than what they're going to get on the stock market, right? So you can set up those kind of programs. I have folks that I've interviewed on my podcast that talk about that, where they become the bank for where a local business needs to get some new equipment and can't readily get it from the bank, and they get paid in 6 months, so that's a piece of it. And then you're going to want to invest in things.
Interrupt. So sorry, Karen, just kind of popped in my head. I need to say it. So essentially being a private financing company. If you, I don't want to even use the word company, just being a private financing would be considered as an angel investing. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean,
I stopped your train of
no,
thought there. I just wanted to ask that.
yeah, because well, in the book, I have a story I tell, the making of a compassionate capitalist, and that is a real investor that when he first got started, he was a corporate guy, and was thinking about leaving his company to go start a company or something like that because he needed to find some more passion in his life, right? And because he was at the highest he could go in that company at that time, and so and he had never heard of angel investing, just like me, coming out of IBM. And so when I introduced him to, and he was like all excited, wanting to get in, I said, no, you got to start slow. So his first investment was a bridge finance to this really incredible technology company that they had a closing date set for this VC, but they needed to make payroll. And he bridged into that, retained a little bit of equity, made like 15-20% back on his money in like 90, 120 days. It added some percentages and some equity because they didn't pay him back in 90 days. It was 120 days. But, that was his first thing. So it's kind of like, making a bet and winning and letting it ride. You just have this kind of money in that,
reminds me
right?
of another story, man. I now that I think about it, I have a lot of examples of my own when I look corporately. So I'll just share this real story. I didn't think we were going to go here. Probably one of the last roles again that I worked in corporate was a company was struggling. They were in bankruptcy, CCAA here in Canada, but I think Chapter 11 is what you guys call it in the US. And so they were trying to figure out to make it work. And of course, the debt holders weren't being paid, and they were running the company at that point at that level. But yeah, there was some bridge financing. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I think not only a better interest rate. For to make payroll and to just to make the 30 days cycle of expenses, and they got, if I'm not mistaken, they also got put above in priority of the original lenders, so to speak, type as well.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's part of it. So like building this profitability, the angel profitability blueprint, right? So then you have the ones that you're going to, it's little known, but it's done. And I'm a big advocate for it. And that is revenue financing. And so when you have a company that is not a traditional tech company that's going to go to that IPO thing or something like this, and or that kind of a deal, consumer products company, or maybe it's a business that is the founders themselves have been building it as a generational business. So it's not something that would typically have equity holders because they're not working towards a clear exit, right? But if you have, so way the royalty revenue financing works is that you basically put money in, you raise capital, and then a percentage of the profits is paid out until a multiple is paid. So it acts like, the return on investment is similar to an angel traditional equity investment, but instead, once the covenants within the agreement, they get to a certain point of revenue, then they start, paying out this percentage. And so say you put $10,000 in, you're going to get paid $40,000 back. So you make a $30,000 profit on your $10,000 investment. And that is like right in the sweet spot of what angels are looking for, and even VCs are looking for when they're doing it. But in this case, it's good, very good for those investors that aren't like a traditional angel, that are in that game. There may be more sophisticated stock market investors, and they understand how to read balance sheets and stock and things like this. And this company wants to come out with a new product, but they need more money than they can get from the bank. They're too small for private equity funds. They're not in the space of a VC. They're too big because they're like a $5 million company now, from angels. Where do they get? This is a great way for them to raise capital within their local community from the other business owners that they know in their community. And then they don't have to wait 10 years for that exit when they may or may not exit. They don't know, but they know they're going to be generating this amount of money from this new product. And they got the bank of their old product that they make enough money to pay you, but they're going to make even more money. And so right? So you build a portfolio that has those kinds of things in it, that it becomes balanced in the type of structure of a deal, as well as industry, different industries and different stages. And that's how you make your 30% return, 3x, 30x return compared to the stock market kind of a thing, and build a portfolio like that.
So Karen, I know a lot of and again, a very diverse audience who listen to this podcast, but I know everyone's gonna be like, okay, that sounds great if you have $1 million to invest or whatever, but is there an opportunity for someone who's maybe, I don't want to say just starting out, but has, an extra 50, 100K, or that they could, pull it out from somewhere else to get some juice, get some better returns. Like, does this work for someone in, let's call it 50 to 100K?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing. When our Congress actually had the vision to bipartisanly pass the Jobs Act in 2012, most people think of crowdfunding as giving entrepreneurs greater access to capital from their customers, because now they can general solicit, right? The internet changed things, and so they saw here's the other thing that the Congress saw, and this is the other side of the table that very few people talk about, and that is at that time, reward-based crowdfunding was 20 years old. Okay, it had been around for about 20 years at that point in time. And you had things that we take for granted now, like drones, 3D printers, smartwatches, VR headsets, and even things like this. I wanted to show this, the fidget widget. Remember all the craze of the fidget widget?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All of those came to market with reward-based crowdfunding. And so everybody, like normal, regular, middle-class people that like this, whatever this new tech was, or like this kind of a thing, they put $100, $1,000, put money into all those companies. Those companies raised millions of dollars to develop and bring products to market that then set them up to get large VC raises and then sell their companies. Or like in the case of Oculus headset, they raised $3 million initially to bring the first products out. Then like another couple $1 million. And then Facebook and other people, Mark Zuckerberg, put in like $100 million. And then they ended up getting bought by Facebook for like $1 billion. So all those people that put in those hundreds or thousands of dollars received no benefit when all that rest of that happened, right? Because they didn't have equity. They only had a product. And so the Congress looked at this and said, okay, we've had people's retirements evaporate because of the real estate bubble and the stock market crash that happened as a result of the financial sector collapsing. And it was forecasted, and it did, 10 years for people to get back just to zero. So if you didn't sell anything, if you didn't take those losses and you held on to that stock and that real estate, and you could pay the mortgages on that real estate and all that kind of stuff, then you got back to zero in 10 years on average across the whole industry. Okay. But in that time, if you now had the opportunity to invest in the next big thing, right, that started out in equity crowdfunding and raised $1 million, $2 million, and then went on to get their VC round, then went on to do that. So that $1,000 you went in, it's not going to be worth 50 grand, but it might be worth 5 grand. And if you take that 50 grand that you've been saving up to buy your next real estate property, to your point of somebody that might have 50 grand in liquid assets to be able to invest in something, they could invest 5,000 into 10 companies, 2,000 into, what's the math on that? 100 companies, whatever, right? They could totally create a diverse portfolio of companies where they have small amounts that doesn't, if I lose 1,000 here, it's not that big a deal. And they could do it over time and really create a portfolio that would make much more than they would on that one real estate property they would be able to buy with that 50 grand.
So then the question becomes, okay, so you answered my question that it's available for people in that range, that example we used. But then the next question is, well, how do I find out about these? Is it, call Karen and she hooks me up? Is there an organization, or then how does someone, like myself, I decide, okay, I want to do this. I want to be an angel investor. What's the first steps?
Sign up for the Compassionate Capitalist Wealth Mastery System.
Fair enough.
Buy the book. First step is buy the book. Okay. $20. easiest investment. There's a resource portal that has these tools, and I thought that that would be sufficient when I wrote it in response to the Jobs Act, to give people a roadmap to would you, should you, could you, and how do you do it to become an angel investor. But you know how it is. People have best intentions. They look at this stuff. Unless they're being chaperoned through the process, it's harder for them to self-start and commit to learning this stuff. So what we've done with the digital courses is take people into each of the aspects so they become comfortable and confident in the process of going forward. And part of it is you do a whole self-assessment. What is it that you know? Because I've had people say, oh, I don't know about angel investing because, I don't want to invest in a barbershop, or I don't want to invest in a liquor company, or, whatever. I go, well, don't. You invest in the thing you do, like what Warren Buffett says, you invest in the things you know. So part of what you have to do is figure out, what do you know from your career, from your hobbies, from your just life experiences? What is it that you know about? What is it that you're passionate about? And that directs where you go look for your opportunities. And the places to look for the opportunities are readily available within online portals. And you start, the best practices is to go slow, figure out what you're going to do. You're going to build when you know how much money you have, and if your goal is to build a portfolio of 10 of these companies over a 2-year period of time, let's say, because time commitment says I can do one a month or one a quarter or whatever it's going to be, then you start to map out, what are you targeting? And if you say, you know what, I want to find a company that's solving this problem, whatever something you do, well, then you look for 5 companies that are trying to solve that problem, or 3 companies, and then you pick the one you like the best, because they're all available in these public forums like that.
Got it.
And then when you get more serious, you start signing up for the little pitch events, and you can watch these things and you see them. And, so there's just a way that you get into it. And then part of what we do within the mastery section of the program, is that we have sessions where the investors come with a deal that they like, and they're like, let's dissect this and see if
So
this
is a
has
group
the
coaching
merit.
program then, or is it one-on-one?
It's it's a group coaching program, and with training, and then kind of hands-on, do the deal sort of, do this. And
yeah, there's a lot of like this also in real estate investing, these type of
right,
programs as
exactly.
well.
It's very much modeled in the way. And in fact, I formulated a lot of this because I participated in, she's kind of, I don't know if she's Laurel Langmeyer. She's kind of a known name, or used to be a known name out there. She might be retired now, but she was one of the first persons that taught me the concept of building an investment portfolio of real estate and picking all the different types of returns on investment that you were looking for.
Makes sense to diversify as well. Karen, let me ask you one little fun question. You don't have to dwell on it too long, and then I got a couple more before we wrap up here. So I think a lot of people, there's certainly personality. So even if you don't watch the show religiously, like I do, people are probably aware. Would you say, those on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or whatever it's called in whatever country, would those be considered, what they're doing on those shows, would that be considered angel investing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's just at a whole different level, because it's a TV show, but they are putting money in, and a little bit like what Mr. Wonderful does, where he takes a percentage of the revenue. That's kind of like the revenue financing I was talking about. He also has an equity,
royalty deal, as he likes to call it.
Right. He's more of a true shark in the way that he puts that together, but it is a useful, program to watch, to learn, because part of what the biggest mistake new investors make is investing on emotion. They see a deal, oh my God, I love this, oh, and this is the problem, and they have no idea that there's 5 different ways to solve that problem and 10 different companies working on it, because they just got this one person, the CEO or the founder is charismatic, and they're emotionally engaged on it, right? And they don't go take it through the process of evaluating it, right? So the nice thing about I like about watching Shark Tank, I don't do it as much anymore. I used to record it all the time and watch it. But the thing I really like is the all the different business models you'll see. The ways that the entrepreneurs answer the questions, well, like because I advise entrepreneurs and investors, and I'll be like, Oh, dude, you just killed yourself by answering that question that way, right? And so when you know kind of what investors are looking for, but it also trains that investor, what kind of questions should I ask? Right?
Yeah,
What are the
that's a
kind
good
of, what
point.
am I looking for? So it's a good, fun way to develop your own financial IQ, whichever side of the table you're sitting on, whether it's a fantasy in the way that they structure some of those deals and the way that things work out, because it is a TV show
Yeah, I mean, it's
and it's
highly edited, of
cultivated
course,
for
and
that.
stuff. Yeah.
It's cultivated for that, but it is, those investors are real investors. The companies that have come to market as a result of their investments are real companies you see in the marketplace. I mean, and I love, it's part of, I get goosies just because I love entrepreneurs. That the thing about that I love about entrepreneurs is that everything that comes to market that you see I started as an idea. And somebody said, hey, there's a problem here. I think I have a better way of doing that. And they figure out how to do that. And then, and they should be rewarded. They need to be trained sometimes on the best way to like scale, because it's easier to get to your first million in revenue, even as hard as that is, than it is to get to 10 million, 20 million, 30 million and doing what you need to scale. So there's a whole nother level of skill set that goes there. But the
Yeah,
very
for sure.
beginning, that inspiration, it's like, to me, it's like part of, I think it's in some ways DNA in the US, in that we're always we're adventurous and trying to solve problems and trying to, find new ways of doing things. And now we have an opportunity for, you can be that successful entrepreneur, but you can also be the investor in those successful entrepreneurs without all the risk of the time, money, blood, sweat, emotion, everything that it takes to be a successful founder.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, we could riff on lessons learned from watching Shark Tank for another hour. But as we come to a close here, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Again, this show is not about health per se. Obviously, we had this wonderful conversation today, but I am the health guy, so I'll throw a couple questions here at you. What is your, from a health point of view, like what does your routine look like, if you have one, or like a morning routine or anything like that? What does that look like for you?
I do so my everyday sort of thing is I do stretches, a few yoga moves that I do to keep my lower back and hips, right? As we get older, we sit a lot, that becomes an issue. And for strength, planks, those kind of things, right? And just that's sort of a big part of it. And then I don't as often as I like, but I like to do Zumba and I like to walk. I do a lot of hiking, things like that. I like to kayak. And so those are sort of, I try to do hobbies that involve physical activity. So I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of people have is enjoying what they do when it comes to exercising.
For sure.
And then I limit my, I don't eat bread unless it's like really good bread. So, like I cannot resist a piece of sourdough and like leave it in my house and I will consume the entire thing if it's particularly homemade sourdough. So, but I, just by, regular old stuff, so I try to do that to limit my, I'll say this is that I'd rather have another glass of wine at 250 calories than a bowl of spaghetti. I'll just eat the sauce. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sounds good. And yeah, I love that too. I like hiking too. I'm a stand-up paddleboard guy myself. And then for those, many of the listeners might, and we're always getting new people all the time listening. So some people might know, but I overcame a back injury. So stretching my lower back, well, my whole body, but my lower back specifically to stretch and also strengthen is I spend half an hour to 45 minutes a day, every day on that. So I can, perform like I want to perform. So Karen, last question, same vein. If you had to talk to your, give advice to your, 20-year-old self or some version of yourself in the past regarding health or health choices, what would you tell your earlier, younger version of yourself?
Wow, I have to think about that. My younger version of myself. I would have probably so the injuries that keep me from being able to do things like tennis and skiing, knee injuries, right? I incurred in high school. And so that ultimately just got worse and worse and worse over time, ligament stuff. And so it'd probably be wear a brace, put on one of those neoprenes. So when you're diving for that ball and you're smashing on your knees and stuff, that you can retain those knees, because they become very critical in the future when you're, that would probably be it. And then probably find something that I love. I never really loved running. And so once you get to a certain age, I think picking up and running and starting to try to love running, I would have tried to learn to love running when I was younger, so that I would still have that desire to do today, even if my knees held up. Right.
Okay. So I'm not going to say it here. We're getting a little bit long here in the interview, but Karen, we're going to talk offline. We'll talk about how you can maybe recover your knees, and then maybe that leads to running if you so choose. So, but
no, I only run when I'm being chased.
But fair enough.
Or I'm late to something.
Or you're late to something. Yeah, that's how my wife runs too, when she's late for something. So Karen, for the audience, Karen has a free download gift that she'd like to give to all the listeners and viewers. It's a free ebook, 12 Secrets to Innovation and Wealth. It's a bit.ly link, and it's going to get complicated for me to say it. So it's going to be in the description. The link will be right there. And then she also has a free intro course for angel/crowd fund investing. Sounds a little bit easier to say, so I'll say that one. It's dothedeal.org. So DOTHE deal.org. So, and again, all the resources and how you can get a hold of Karen, everything will be in the description, all the links and everything like that. Are there any last words of wisdom or golden nuggets, so to speak, that you like to share with the audience, Karen?
I guess it would be just really investigate what the possibilities are with angel investing or crowdfunding investing, because the benefits go beyond the financial we've talked about. There is great emotional reward from being involved in these kind of deals. It's not for the faint of heart. And it's not for somebody it's not for, do one and done. It's something that you want to build over time. But just like you take time to learn, if you manage your own stock portfolio and you do your own real estate investment, you totally have the financial knowledge and skills to be able to do this and assess and discern the types of investments. And if not, then you can learn, because that's the program that we do. And I really want people to join the Compassionate Capitalist movement. There's 7 million people out there with $75,000 or more in income that invest in real estate. And there's only about 700,000 on the accredited angel side, 350,000 in angel groups, and about 350,000 people that invested in Reg CF crowdfunding companies in 2022. And so there's a big opportunity of that delta of some of you real estate investors to jump in here. And there's a lot more companies and a lot more worthy companies needing capital than there's capital out there for them. So we can solve so many of our world's problems across the board and create wealth within our communities and bridge the wealth gap, particularly for women and people of color, that has been generationally kind of grown over time. You can leapfrog that by getting involved in this kind of an asset. So I really want to highly encourage that.
I love that. I love that last point you said there. And I think, just in general, I would say, whether it be, this topic we've talked today or anything, like, people, just be curious, learn new things, find something that excites you, or you build some passion around, and go for it. And I guess second point is, diversify your portfolio. You can't just be all one, you shouldn't just be all mutual funds. But even if you're going to play in that read, and you should, that's be diversified there, but then have some real estate, have some, whatever type of thing. And this is another avenue. And certainly I'm going to be investigating this a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Let me
Go ahead, please.
Point. So here's the thing that people don't realize. They hear about in real estate how they can take money, unlock the power of their 401k by putting it in a self-directed IRA or a Roth IRA to invest in real estate. Guess what? You can invest in private companies the same way. So if you were to invest in those royalty financing, that revenue financing we're talking about, so just like rental income coming back into your investment portfolio, that income from that investment you made in that company that's got that big contract, right? Now you can have that come back in.
Okay, that brings one last question. What I promise, folks, this is the last question. So obviously, you're US based, and you've been using a lot of examples US based. How does that relate to? I mean, I'm up here in Canada. Our audience is all over the world, UK, Australia. Can people in other countries like work with it too? Are there similar type of things, programs, like especially like that last one? So up here, we don't have 401ks; we call them RRSPs. You know, is that same type of thing available to
So
your
that
knowledge?
RSS, well, I would guess that they would have, so because basically 401ks and RSSPs are usually corporate retirement, like you put in through your check at corporate, and then independently owned companies and sole proprietors and, you know, entrepreneurs, small business owners, they usually end up setting up some kind of like a Roth IRA down here, they call that. And then the self-directed IRA is basically the same. That's when you just put your own money in after taxes into a retirement fund. That's why when you make money in it, you don't end up paying the taxes on it because it's after taxes, right? And so I would guess that there would be something similar in most, you know,
Yeah, I think
developed
the rules may be
companies
a
like
little
that.
bit different. So yeah, so I guess people I'll just say is like, you know, you obviously do your own homework. Reach out to Karen. Again, all the
Yeah,
links
I'll
we'll
go
have
look it
there,
up.
and we'll figure it out. So
You know what?
uh
Maybe I'll reach out to one of my partners in that area and say, "Hey, let's do a podcast and talk about this for US and all these other countries."
yeah, start with Canada.
I will.
Start with Canada. No, Karen, awesome conversation today. Again, appreciate you being on today. It was a fantastic, fun conversation. We could go on for another hour. I got a million questions, but maybe we'll talk some of that
Well, we'll do another
offline.
one.
Yeah, we'll have a round two. Maybe we'll have a round two in the future. So thank you again. I'm going to throw it back to Jxxiii to guide us out with some music. Thanks for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you.
Thank you so much.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company